Welcome to Rational Discourse Weekly. It's Monday, January 28th, 2013. I'm William Garrison.
And I'm Michael Aune.
And we're here today to talk a bit about charter schools and why we think the voucher program may have some interesting loopholes. Schools that are either anti-gay or maybe still teach creationism. And
basically, we touched on a lot of topics about how the intersection of religious institution or religious belief can affect you in the public sphere indirectly or directly, and why you might want to at least know what's going on with some of your tax dollars and things like that. Stay tuned.
All right, so some interesting things that I was made aware of today. Actually, I didn't know this was a problem and that this was a debate that needed to be had. Honestly, evidently, even here in Georgia, a large number of schools. This article says over 100 different schools that aren't directly publicly funded, but they're a part of the voucher program. Mostly Christian schools that basically openly say that they don't want gay students, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, they're
actively
discriminating
or discriminating against
schools. And it's an interesting debate talking about, even though they're not directly publicly funded through the voucher system,
hundreds of millions of dollars are still going to these schools directly from state coffers is the problem.
And obviously in some of these places, another topic of conversation was the whole the creation science, as they like to call it.
Yeah,
these schools that, because they're a Christian school, like to sort of embed Christianity in their science and philosophy classes to try to describe how science somehow supports the evidence that they see, or somehow supports the stories of the Bible, that the earth is 6,000 years old. We talked about the battle earlier, how the sun stopped for that entire entire battle. Just weird stuff like that obviously science doesn't support any of these things, but that's at least what they like to propose. Partially because I feel like some of that kind of stuff isn't even really challenged, because it's not like it's put up for public debate. I feel like if
people have brought up, like, there have been attempts at a pseudo-scientific explanation for how it is that the sun could be seen to stand still in the sky for an extended period of time and all that. So, again, it's still a miracle, because at some point, the whole idea is that God intervened. If God didn't intervene, then you just said that it actually was just an aberration that humans mistook as a miracle. So, that's...
Well, and
I've never understood that argument.
You have to go out on some other steps here. I don't know much about that story. I haven't read that portion of the Bible. Yeah. What book did you say that was from?
I don't remember the book.
Okay, but the reason why I bring it up is, it's like you have to assume that the story that's being told in the Bible is completely accurate. Like, you'd have to look at other accounts of it. You'd have to, it's really easy to say that it seemed like the sun was up for a really, really long time during a battle, but it's one thing to go out on a limb and assume it's true.
Well, just for the reference, it's Joshua 10:13, and the New International Version, circa 1984, states that, "So the sun stood still and the moon stopped, so the nation avenged itself on its enemies, as is written in the book of Jashar. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky and delayed going down about a full day." So, unless they were having this battle at the polar ice cap, I'm pretty certain that is improbable.
Well, in some other, it sounds to me like one of those, I think they call them like fish tales, where guys are like, "Oh yeah, I caught a fish this big," or whatever.
That battle was so awesome.
That the sun was up for like 24 hours. Yeah, it was probably middle of summer. The days are longer. And
how drunk were you when this happened? That's what I want to ask.
Well, and I imagine that after a very long battle, you might go home and feel really tired, like you had a really fulfilling long day, because
after you've slaughtered hundreds of people. Nothing says attaboy like a good nap.
An ale, a nice toasty ale.
It's not
Not
ale.
a toasted ale.
That's a hard mango punch. That's what you committed on me today. Committed to me.
But anyways, these are the kinds of leaps and things that, and that's why you don't see these so-called science and history books being taught in normal public schools. It's not. Obviously, they're not.
It flies in the face of the entire, historical body of evidence, basically, or scientific body of evidence, to try and wedge this one thing in there. But I mean, it just goes back to the point that part of the reason I think that we feel that a more proactive stance, drawing attention to issues like this, standing up against them when possible. There's someone from Louisiana. He was a student. What's his name? Zach Copeland. And this is not new news by any means, but he's been getting some national attention, I think, over the last 2 years in his public fights against the Louisiana school system, because the governor's voucher program is piping lots and lots of money to schools that actively and openly teach creationism. And of course, the idea is that, as a society, first of all, you're making your kid dumber. I'm sorry. Try going to Germany and applying, a creationist version of history there, a more secular society, and see if they're going to get a job. No, because you don't know the truth. You don't know the facts that the rest of the world acknowledges. So ignoring anything else about the faith-based aspect of it, or even the more legally tenuous problems of separation of church and state, this is just a bad thing to teach your kids. I mean, the amount of evidence that supports this sort of worldview, even if some of the minor facts are hazy or maybe up for debate, does not fit at all with what you're trying to teach, which is a small subsegment of facts that you are having to gerrymander into this other body.
That's the first time gerrymander has been used in our podcast, I'd like to point out.
I'm glad that that's a 37G first.
Yeah.
Hooray, gerrymander.
I mean, I love the word.
In a non-political sense, too. I mean, so kudos, I guess. 5 word points to me. 95 more and I can buy a car.
But, the reason why we bring up this topic is, like Michael said, to bring some light to it.
Again,
but
not
also,
that it hasn't had light brought to it. But
Christian schools are going to exist. I kind of, I concede that.
But if it's privately funded, if a person takes money from their bank account, which they earned from whatever they do, and then they pay that, I'm okay with that. I don't want my tax dollars being piped into someone's checking account, so then they can pay that. Because all you're doing is indirectly funding the school, as opposed to directly funding the school.
Well, and
so at least hold them to guidelines that the public schools are held to.
When talking about guidelines, we talked earlier about accreditation before we actually started filming the podcast. If these schools, even private schools, if they're to be held to standards, and these kids want to go to college after going to their Christian high school or whatever, their school books and their curriculum, should be forced to meet the same thing that anyone else from public school. If their science book specifically says, like, Christian science book on the cover, and it accounts a history of our world where dinosaurs and man roamed the earth together, I don't think that should be an accredited course or a diploma that will allow someone to go to a normal college to. Now, obviously,
where they might yet again be subsidized by state funds.
Yeah.
To go, in-state tuition and all that. And again, it's bad for all of us if that sort of basically lack of accountability almost is just allowed to continue and just allowed to go free. Because eventually what you're saying is the truth is up for grabs. And I think that unless we are going to try and strive for some sort of objectively verifiable truth on which we can all agree based on evidence that's provided, I don't know how else we all try and move forward together. Because if we have 10% of the population who basically believes a different version of history and science than we do, I mean, that's a drag on all of us. That hurts us, and it's only going to lead towards further stagnation. And ignoring the other issues, like when you go back to the fact that like LGBT kids are being actively either discouraged from coming out for fear of being kicked out of these schools, things like that. Again, it's you're allowing state money, which is supposed to be basically secular, to go to what are primarily Christian religious institutions. Now, it's not technically like it has to go to them, so that's the workaround, is that it's not specifically for Christian institutions. There could be a fully secular private school. But you can easily say, well, you're violating rights that in the public sphere we do not allow to be violated. You can't discourage, you can't not hire someone for being openly gay or something like that. Just like you can't, discourage people for being black. Imagine the uproar if it was a school that said black people can't come.
Yeah.
It'd be a huge deal.
And the point is, we're still going through a civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement is not done by a long shot.
It's evolving, and, people have to learn. We have to...
Well, we moved on from race right now, and it seems that sexuality, right, is the biggest thing, or gender identity and things like that, which is good. I mean, I'm glad that it's at the forefront, and it seems to be moving the right way. People seem to be getting more open to the idea that these people are just people and deserve basic human rights. But that's a different argument. I don't want to dive into that per se. But what I'm saying is, the problem is, again, we're taking money that's not supposed to be used for these purposes and indirectly allowing it to be used for these purposes.
Basically through a loophole. It's not a loophole in the same way that it wasn't an intended use of it.
If 95% of the schools that this money are going to are, religiously affiliated,
and have these kinds of policies,
and hundreds of them are then discriminatory or teaching, again, scientific courses, biology that ignores evolution. Well, how you would not literally pass our public high school exam, which is what we as a people have decided that the vast majority of our children have to know to be functional members of society and be able to move on either to higher levels of learning or like go into the workforce. I mean, the diploma is supposed to mean something, and you're almost demeaning the diploma for everyone by saying, well, if you don't want to believe this, you can just believe that.
Yeah, these people, this subset of people can go to a public or a private Christian school, learn completely different information, and still have the same accreditation.
Yeah. So make some of the basic standards equal. Like you can't present evidence in this way or that if you are going to accept public money, which would be through the voucher program. So it's still your option. You want to be a completely privately funded school? Have a field day. Do whatever you want. Survival of the fittest in the end. Will be okay. Your kid will not be a threat to me, hopefully, in the job market. But when you allow enough kids to get out there, get misinformed, and ultimately just get hurt by the education that's provided to them, and we as a people are helping fund that, I think it's just totally unacceptable.
I completely agree. And
that's where public pressure comes in. I mean, look at the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, we talked about the Boy Scouts a bit too. Is they're basically a Christian organization. They openly say it, and
they still can't have openly gay leadership. I don't think they say anything about membership per se.
Membership is a little shady because I think technically in their bylaws that they can, like.
I think if you were out or promoting it, they can.
Yeah. Same thing goes with.
It's
atheists.
Still a private organization is the thing. So technically they do whatever they want.
Atheists are members of other organizations. It was kind of like the Chick-fil-A debate.
Yeah. Which again, that's different though because it's private.
It's as a private organization or even as a private individual, like the right to free speech and to freely suggest or promote or whatever you want to do is fine. But
that is also, the ultimate protection.
We, as private individuals, can call you out as hateful,
discriminatory, and
say that you don't really have a place to do those kinds of things in today's world.
Yeah,
this isn't the 1800s
or the 1950s.
Yeah,
I don't know. All I know, But again, I had an option there. So like, I don't want to go support Chick-fil-A. I don't go eat at Chick-fil-A,
Yeah.
which I miss.
Yeah.
It's tough driving past one on the way home every day. I'm not gonna lie. Would have been good. But in any case, I don't have any choice where my tax dollars go.
Yeah.
So if I'm not going to have a choice, I'd at least like to make sure that there's some basic safeguards in place so that I know it's not going to improperly educating kids.
Yeah, just regulation on the voucher program,
Yeah.
like we talked about accreditation.
And again, if you go fully private, then I have literally nothing to say. Your rights are as protected as my right to not give you my business.
Right.
And so then now we're even again. But in a sense, it's like I'm forced to give you money.
Yeah.
To teach things that are wrong. And I don't like that at all. So that bothers me a lot. And then, I mean, you get other things. You get the fact, if you're looking at the intersection between sort of the way that religious institutions can intersect, the fact that, like, churches are, tax-exempt organizations, and yet the cash flow that goes through them is huge.
Well, and the thing that bothers me about this, when I had conversations with I've only had conversations with Christians about this very topic about taxing churches. The thing that they commonly complain or bring up is that they're protected and that they're given this exemption because they're generalized as
Nonprofit.
They help the public, so on and so forth. My problem is they're not held up to the same standards as nonprofits. They don't have to report the same amount of things as nonprofits. They don't have to have the same employment, verification, and I don't think we can have it both ways. If they're gonna be ran as almost a private business, is almost what they're done now, just tax exempt private businesses.
Yeah.
Then they should pay taxes. If they're going to be run as nonprofits, then I see no reason why they shouldn't have the exact same number of regulations and government oversight that current nonprofits do.
Yeah.
And you basically don't have to do any of those things when you say you're a church. You're basically given free run. It's
Well, I'm looking at something referenced in The Economist that estimates that in 2010 the Catholic Church spent $171 billion. Walmart had revenues and expenditures. Let's see, GM's revenue was $150 billion. And what it looks like charitable activities, national charitable activities and stuff, is about 2.7% of that.
So 2.7% of their income in a year?
Of their expenditures on $171 billion. Looks like it went to actual charitable work. The rest was in for their healthcare and things like that. Basically maintaining the organization.
Churches, hospitals.
So you're saying an organization that pulls in that much money and actually then expends so little for its expressed purpose, which is supposed to be charity, doesn't get tax exempt status? Any nonprofit that was supposed to be a charitable organization that spent that little, I'm sure would have tax exempt status revoked. But because it's a church, it's a religious institution, it's unquestioned.
It's like a protected. It's a protected classification, I guess. That's like all the petitions that are trying to get the Westboro Baptist Church classified as a hate group. I don't think that's going to happen for obvious reasons. I don't know. I would hope that they would just for the tax purposes because that is basically
because that's what they spend their money on is hateful activities.
I think that is
you can
more
still
likely.
do it as much as a terrible human being as you are for being a part of it, but you shouldn't get tax breaks from me to subsidize you picketing funerals of dead soldiers. No, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm not okay with
I
that.
think that is way more likely, at least in a short term, than our goal of saying, hey, these churches should be either treated as nonprofit or should be taxed like private businesses. I mean, that seems like a really long-term goal.
If the debt crisis gets too bad, we may pull what Spain's thinking about in some municipalities, I guess, which is to tax the churches now because the church is the wealthiest landowner in the country.
Wow. Yeah.
And again, they're obviously, they're not using the money to help the poor too much. So
according to 2.7%. The problem is because the Catholic Church is the richest church on the planet.
It may very well be the wealthiest organization on the planet.
2.7% of a crap ton is still a crap ton.
It is. I mean, you're talking about what, 3.5 billion, give or something, or
yeah,
maybe 4.5 billion.
That's how I think, at least in the public eye, that's how they get away with it. If you told the average person that the Catholic Church, donates,
but that's also what they do worldwide.
Yeah, and
so you're saying that's less. That's about 60 cents per person.
Where's my 60 cents?
I have not seen my 60 cents.
Someone took my 60
Catholic
cents.
Church, you owe me 27 years of 60 cent pay.
I don't think they like
with
atheists.
Interest. That's true. They probably will exclude me on that small technicality of not believing the most basic doctrinal belief that you have to have to be a member of the church. But anyway, I think that is again why we're doing this. Why we want to be a voice for raising issues, discussing issues, and then hopefully, maybe down the road, being able to help more proactively fight against some of the things that we see as injustices or just generally bad things. So.
I agree. Well, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.
See ya. All right, let's go. Take us away, Billy. Stretch. I gotta limber up before we do this. It's very physical work. All right, we're live.
Sure, real quick.
Let me just finish sending you links. God, I'm being dumb and it's pissing me off. There we go.
Boats and hoes. Boats and hoes. What did we have stuck in our head before boats and hoes?
We were doing.
Oh, is that?
Yes, it was.
Brr, brr. Yeah, if we ever get bored, we can just. We got a camera now. We can just.
I just want to. I want to go see what this is. I'm tired of feeling left out.
We'll keep it running.
Let me just step on this computer.
Please don't.